when my mom got home from Safeway. She was really excited, but I had no idea why she was excited. I wanted to figure out why she was so excited, so I walked up to her and I heard her asking my dad if we could get a kitten. I wanted to know, at first I thought it was just a fake kitten because my mom likes those kind of things. But I decided to ask her anyways. I asked her if it was a fake kitten, and when she said no, I got so excited that I begged my dad for the kitten. When he finally said yes, I ran into the car and my brother was right behind me. My mom got into the car and we drove down to Safeway. On the way, my mom told me not to get my hopes up because the kittens might not be there. But when we got there, my mom got out of the car and me and my brother stayed in the car. She walked back holding a black and white kitten. I walked over to the box of kittens, picked up a black one, and held it. My mom told me she wanted the black and white one, so I let her get it. We all walked into Safeway and got some kitten food. We got in the car and drove home. On the way home, we tried to think of some names for the kitten. My mom wanted to name her Flower because she looked like a skunk, and on Bambi, the skunk's name was Flower. But I didn't want to name her Flower. Since then, we've just been calling her Kiki. She never actually got a name. It's really funny because every time someone asks me where I got my cat, I say Safeway. And that's how I got my kitten.
Thank you.
He has dark brown hair. He's very smart too. He was my hero because he had a lot of special things. He invented a breakfast club where kids would go when they were having trouble in school. He would give them breakfast there too, and that's why it's called the Breakfast Club. In 4th grade, my worst subject was math, and I hated it. After I was in his class, I loved math, and it was my favorite subject. He wore wacky ties every day to school, and one time in the year, during the year-end picture day, he wanted to get a picture for his wife, so he put a parasol over his shoulder, and he put a rose in his mouth, and that's the picture I'm going to show you today. And I'm going to walk around and show you it, and he looks really weird because he looks like a girl. And that's it. It shows you how to make different bows for your hair, and my mom bought it because she loves making things for Christmas for your hair. Okay, I'm going to do something called the poo, and you take a regular hairband and you take a piece of stiff material and you tie it over the metal plate of the hairband in a regular knot, the first one. I'm not going to make it as big as you should because I don't have enough time, but I'm just going to make it with a couple pieces of material. And you tie that first one over the metal plate, and then you take the second one, any color, and you tie it right next to the one you just did. And I just got 2 of each color, and I did 3 colors, but I'm not going to use all of it. And the next one you put on the other side, and you take it a 3rd color. My mom made one with 2 colors, but I didn't bring it. And I'm going to put one more. And when you're done, you push them all together and you bring them up and you hold them like that for 30 seconds so they won't like flop down. You hold it like that. Well, I'm not going to do it for 30 seconds, and then you're done. That's it. Okay, first I'm going to tell you about some of the history of swimming. No one ever knows when swimming first started because some people say that early men fell in the water somehow and moved their arms and legs and learned how to swim. And some people say they learned after watching animals swim. And a lot later, during the Middle Ages, swimming declined in Europe because people thought that the water was a source of disease. And then during the 17th century, a long time after that, after swimming was spread throughout the U.S., the Japanese were the first to organize swimming races in the early part of the 17th century. The first woman to ever win a gold medal for the U.S., her name was Donna Di Verona, and she won a pair of gold medals for the United States in the 1964 Olympics. And today she is a sports commentator on television, and that's a picture of her. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about how I swim. Okay, I'm on a swim team, and every Monday through Wednesday I get up at 7:30 and I swim 60 to 70 laps. And every Saturday at 6:30 I go to meets, or 7:30 I go to meets. And last year I won a trophy for swimming at the meets because our team won the championships. And I'm on the Westgate Gators League champions, and it says on the plaque, Westgate Gators League champions. Laura beat him like 9/10 because it was on September 10th, the day after my birthday. And I like swimming because it's an active sport that you get to go in the water, and I like learning new strokes and how to swim faster. Well, if I did, I would feel sorry for it, but I wouldn't help it. Trying to help a wild animal could be dangerous. There are 4 reasons why it might be dangerous. Number 1, the animal could have a disease that you could catch, for example, salmonella, which could make people very sick. Number 2, the animal may have a disease that you couldn't cure, such as rabies, which can also be deadly to humans. Number 3, the animal may try to hurt you while you're trying to help it. For example, it may claw you or bite you. Number 4, the animal's a baby. The mother wouldn't be close to watching it. And if you bother the baby, the mother would try to hurt you. In summary, it's dangerous to pick up wild animals, even if you think they are hurt, because they may harm you by biting you, clawing you, or even giving you a deathly disease.
I think animals should be helped because they need to be helped, and that's why the people who help animals wear gloves and protective gear, and they don't get help. They could one day be endangered, and if they don't get help, sometimes they die. But after they get help, they should be released, because if you don't, they're in captivity, and I don't think that's fair, because they should live in a habitat that the animals pick lives for themselves. And do you think animals should be helped or not? Because I should do.
All you had was sticks, dirt, rocks, or anything else you could find in nature. Well, early man thought of a lot of interesting ways to hunt and cook, and they also made tools to help them. First, I'm going to tell you about their hunting tools. Most of the earlier men just had spears, which was a long stick with a sharp rock tied to the end of it, by either using animal hides or animal skins or leather for the later men. And they had something called a small adze, which was what the scientists called it, or archaeologists called it, and it was used for cutting pieces off the animal after it was like dead. It looks kind of like a hammer with a sharp rock at the end. It's that one. They didn't have very really fighting weapons, but the Indians had bows and arrows and everything. But they just they weren't smart enough to think of using their tools, so they just used sharp rocks, and they just threw them at each other. It was really weird. But they had a lot of daily tools, like a bark plate, which is just a piece of hollowed out bark, and they put berries and stuff like that in it. And they had something called sandstone rubber, which was a type of rock that they used to pound grains. That weird thing. It's kind of like a coconut. Okay, and they had something called a early sickle, and it was made out of flint and wood, and they used it to cut wheat, and the later men used iron to cut it. And they had something called noose of twine, which was a type of, they made it into a trap to catch rodents to eat, stuff like that. And they made it out of weaving strips of grass or wheat together. And they used something called a flint fire starter. It helped to make fire by banging it on something, and since it was made out of flint, it would spark and make fire. And the archaeologists had something called a dual-purpose tool, and that's right there. They used it to dig up roots. It was an antler sleeve with a rock shoved into it. And a long time ago, my dad's great-grandma, she lived up in Nebraska, and an Indian came up to her door one day and asked her to trade for food. And my dad still has that tomahawk that he traded her for. And the only only thing different about it is my dad's brother broke it, so there's glue right there. And instead of having leather wrapped around it, they put tape because the leather like grosses out and it falls apart if it's too old. In conclusion, I think the early man made good use of the things they had to make tools. Besides, if it wasn't for them, we might not have fire or even wheels. Well, if you have, did you see any geckos? Because I'm doing my hair on day geckos. Those are the kind of geckos that you see in Hawaii. You can tell geckos apart from lizards because geckos have rounder bodies and rounder toes so they can stick to things. Lizards also get to be much bigger than geckos. Lizards get to be about 10 feet, when geckos only get to be about 10 inches. The largest day gecko is a Mediterranean day gecko, and it gets to be 10 inches. Picture of it. My favorite day gecko is the gold dust day gecko, and that gets to be 4 inches, but instead of having green or brown, it has gold on it. There. The most unique day gecko is called the flat-tailed day gecko. It has kind of like webbing coming off of the sides of its tail. It's only a picture of it. Day geckos are unique because most geckos are nocturnal, so they sleep during the day and are active at night. But day geckos are asleep at night and active during the day. Day geckos are also interesting because they pollinate, which means they go from one flower and they eat that nectar and they bring it to the next flower and they have pollen in it, and it causes fruit to grow. Day geckos lick fruit and they get the juice from it, and they also eat nectar, but like lizards, their main diet is insects. In the wild, they eat any insects they can find, but in captivity, they eat things like crickets, mealworms, or fruit flies without any wings. I think day geckos are the most unique out of all geckos because of all their interesting and unusual traits.
So I found out some kind of interesting news today.
Yeah, what?
Nacho, ve ao supermercado y compra 5 manzanas y 3 latas de sopa y 2 naranjas.
¿Está bien?
Hasta luego. Nacho, ve ao supermercado y compra 5 manzanas y 3 latas de sopa y 2 naranjas.
¿Está bien?
Hasta luego.
Hola, buenos días.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Estamos bien. Bien. ¿Cómo tiene unas citas?
No, lo siento.
Está bien.
Adiós.
Margarita, ¿quieres vamos a la tienda del sombrero? Claro que sí. ¿Qué hacer la semana pasada? Yo y mi hermano fuimos al cine y tú. El sábado pasado yo cené con mamá.
Nosotros compramos sopa, papas y naranjas. ¿Qué necesitan?
Nosotros necesitamos sombrero.
Yo quiero un sombrero azul.
¿Tú quieres aquel?
No, me gusta este más que este. Yo quiero este sombrero de blanco.
¿Tú quieres aquella?
Sí, ¿cuánto cuestan?
Está 50 pesetas.
Yo quiero un sombrero de mexicana.
Vamos a llevar todos los sombreros. Gracias. Adiós.
Adiós. Adiós.
Adiós.
Hasta luego.
I was taking a bath. Long about a Saturday night. Yeah. Rubbed up, just relaxing in the tub. Thinking everything was alright. Well, I stepped out the tub, put my feet on the floor. I wrapped the towel around me and I opened the door. And in a splish splash, I jumped back in the bath. Well, how was I to know there was a party going on? There was a splishing and a splash, reeling with the feeling, moving and a grooving, rocking and a rolling. Yeah! Bing bang, I saw the whole gang dancing on my living room rug. Yeah, flip flop, they was doing the bop. All the teens had the dancing bug. There was Lollipop with a Peggy Sue. Good to golly, Miss Molly was even there too. With a splish splash, I forgot about the bath. I went and put my dancing shoes on. Yeah, I was a rolling and a strolling, reeling with the feeling, moving and a grooving, splishing and a splashing. Hey, yes, I was a splishing and a splashing. I was a rolling and a strolling. Yeah, I was a moving and a grooving. Woo! We was a reeling with the feeling. There was a rolling and a strolling, moving with the grooving. Splish, splash. Yeah, splishing and a splashing. One time I was a splishing and a splashing. Woo-wee! I was a moving and a grooving. Yeah, I was a splishing and a
for national technology leadership. Major funding for and biannual financial support from viewers.
Tell me what food you'd like.
Surprise.
So food surprise.
Surprise.
Condi, would you like a juice or some M&Ms or some sugar cane?
M&M's.
You like M&Ms? Okay. Condi, is there any other food you'd like me to bring in the backpack? A ball? Okay.
This conversation is the first time that the chimpanzee has ever spoken on the telephone using his talking keyboard. On the other end of the phone was Janine Murphy.
I do. I was on the phone with you.
It was a conversation with someone not physically present about events yet to take place.
Hello.
Surprise.
Yeah, you talked
It's not the kind of thing which scientists thought chimpanzees could do.
In looking at what Kanzi can do, the kinds of utterances that he can emit without any specific training, the kinds of really complex sentences that he can understand without any training, make one suspect that in apes now, and certainly in early hominids, there was a capacity for some form of primitive language.
The food surprise. Kind of like gummy bears, yes.
The idea that apes and humans might share a common potential for language radically undermines the view that there is a strict divide between humans and the animal world.
Oh, big box full of M&Ms.
Kanzi is a bonobo, a rare chimpanzee species, and the latest in a long line of apes to be used by scientists to study language.
I'm going to help get some sticks. Good. I have a lighter in my pocket if you need one. You can get it out. There's a lot of discomfort in accepting the fact that apes really have language. Kanzi's ability to understand suggests to me that if he had a human vocal tract, he would be talking.
This is probably the strongest claim ever made for the linguistic capacity of a chimpanzee.
I need you to break this stick for Sue, please. We as human beings have always considered language our own domain and that it is innate.
Most current theories of linguistics assume that only humans can acquire language.
You got to put some water on the fire. Do you see the water?
Only humans are thought to have a brain specially evolved to decode the complex rules of grammar.
Good job.
Now, Kanzi's ability insists to re-examine this fundamental idea.
Your pictures, just watch them all. They going around. All right. Kanzi, see if you can find mushrooms. Mushrooms. That's right. Those are the mushrooms. Real good. Can you turn back around? Okay. Now. Okay, you're doing real good, Kanzi. See if you can find Madu, the orangutan. You see Madu? Good job. Good job. See if you can find some melon. 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 Thank you.
Kanzi, come on. We're all set. We're ready.
Kanzi consistently scores better than 90% with such sets of pictures. A more rigorous test involves Kanzi wearing headphones, so only he can hear which picture is being requested.
Kanzi, give Sue bananas. That's right. Kanzi, give Sue ice. That's right. Kanzi, give Sue pears. That's right. Kanzi, give Sue potatoes.
The tests on single words are convincing, but how does Kanzi deal with words in combination? How do researchers know that he is not just doing the most obvious thing, given the range of possibilities available to him?
Need your ball on here with all these other things.
One of the hallmarks of human language is its creativity, the possibility of expressing an infinite number of ideas. We can understand the meaning of a sentence even if we have never heard its words in that particular order ever before. Dr. Savage Rumbaugh set out to test whether the same applied to Kanzi.
Can you hear me, Kanzi? Give the doggy a shot.
There were 600 sentences in all, designed to use different grammatical forms and to be as unpredictable as possible.
Good job. Okay, thank you. Put the key in the refrigerator. Good job. Thank you. Very nice. Okay, go get the ball that's outdoors.
To do this, Kanzi has to ignore another ball which is indoors. And carry out such instructions is interesting enough. But Dr. Savage Rumbaugh went a step further. How did Kanzi's understanding of language compare with that of human children? Janine Murphy volunteered her daughter, Aaliyah, to take part in an identical study at the age of 2 years. On some sentence types, Kanzi excelled. On others, the child did better. But by and large, both were correct about 3/4 of the time. So far as comprehension went, child and chimp were on a par.
Could you take my shoe off, please? You might need to untie it.
For both child and chimp, the ability to understand outstrips their ability to produce language. The girl because of her age, and Kanzi because the chimpanzee vocal tract does not allow it.
Now you can take it off. It will come off now.
It is in what an individual comprehends that we use as the basis for saying that individual is language competent. If they can't speak because of some anatomic reason, we don't say, well, they don't have language. We say that they can't speak and they need some other kind of medium for that.
Good. Milk.
You want some milk? I know, you always want some milk when you're planning to be good. I like you.
keys. Matata. Good.
Oh, you want a key to see Matata, and you're going to be good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. For a long time, it was thought that only the human brain could understand human speech. Now we know that Kanzi's brain can understand human speech, which says very clearly that something important happened in our evolution. Our brains were able to understand speech, and suddenly our mouths became able to produce speech.
The sudden emergence of speech from a hominid, which hitherto had, like the ape, only a potential for language, may be linked with our unique anatomy.
I suspect that there's something very, very unique about the human bipedal posture and the human vocal laryngeal apparatus. One of the things that we know it enables us to do is make sounds like ga and ba and pa and da, sounds that we call consonants. Kanzi can't make these kinds of sounds. His sounds mostly vowel sounds. Now, if I try to talk to another person using only vowel sounds, they can't understand me.
Kanzi often tries to copy human speech, but analysis of the voice prints of human and bonobo shows the problem. The human print shows the boundaries of the words clearly, where Kanzi's are blurred.
We invent a language for Kanzi that was composed only of vowel sounds, and we couldn't understand ourselves, which tells you what consonants do for us. They wrap little packages around vowel sounds. They are like edges around vowel sounds, and they help us tell our words apart, where one word stops and where another word starts. And because we could do that, we could invent languages. We could utter new sounds that were discriminably different. We could go around and name all kinds of things with words that sounded different to other individuals. And I think this must have been a great turning point in the evolution of mankind. And I think if you could give chimpanzees or bonobos that same ability today, they would take off and they might follow a course that would be eerily similar to that of our own species.
Either affording or just getting into the classes you want to take this quarter danza. This is actually expected to be a problem for a long time because of the budget cuts to California public schools. I want you all to leave here today knowing not only how these school budget cuts affect De Anza, but how they affect each of you individually. California budget cuts in schools are increasing our tuition, decreasing the number of classes available, and decreasing the staff available at all public schools, UC campuses, CSU campuses, and community colleges. Schools are increasing tuition in an attempt to save programs and classes. Community colleges have had a 4.3% reduction in the budget that's available to them. This has increased tuition from $11 per unit to $18 per unit, and it's estimated that it's going to create a problem for 200,000 students. 6,600 of those students are in our district, and that's the equivalent of shutting down all 9 UC campuses. This means an average increase of about $120 per year. So let's say you take 4 classes, that would be an average of about 16 units. So it would normally be about $176 for a quarter. It's now costing you $288, and that's without the cost of books, which we all know are ridiculously expensive. UC and CSU schools have had a 1.8% budget reduction, so it's nowhere near our 4.3%, but it's pretty bad. It's increased California State Universities by about $400 per year, increased from $1,600 to $2,000. The CSU Chancellor, Charles Reed, says, "This fee increase is a painful decision and one of the many difficult issues that CSU has faced during this budget crisis." UC schools have increased their tuition by $400 this spring alone, and with the estimated $800 increase they're going to have pretty soon, that's a 35% increase in tuition in just a 2-year time period. But increasing tuition is not enough to balance these losses. Unfortunately, a lot of staff are being fired also. Community colleges such as De Anza can't afford hourly employees anymore, so they're firing or laying off all of their part-time employees. There's fewer library employees, fewer lab technicians, fewer tutors, and fewer counselors to help students. Staffing is so thin that people have begun taking what they call exhaustion leave. And I have a quote from a De Anza student, and there's a club here called the Students for Justice Club, and there's a quote from one of the people that says, "Since the budget crisis By eliminating all these full-time and part-time employees, they're creating problems because there aren't enough classes available also. De Anza has shut down a career development and employment program, which was for disabled students to help them find jobs. While I was doing my research, I found a story of a De Anza girl who was disabled. Her name's Shira. And there was a big protest in Sacramento, and she attended the big protest in Sacramento. And she had a plan to get out of her wheelchair and crawl up to the stage of the Capitol building and give a speech that she had prepared about how the budget cuts had affected her and how she was having trouble finding a job because its programs were cut by at least 50%. It has existed, this program that they shut down because the budget cuts has existed for 20 years, and it was really important to the disabled community, helping them finding jobs. About 360 classes from De Anza have been cut this past winter quarter, and more cancellations are expected to occur. General education classes obviously are the hardest to get into because people who are transferring to CSU or UC schools need these classes to be able to transfer, so it's taking transfer students even longer to be able to get into their colleges. When I was signing up for summer school, out of all of the classes that were offered this quarter, there were exactly 2 classes that were transferable to Cal Poly. The California budget cuts in schools have increased all of our tuition, almost doubled our tuition. They've eliminated many staff positions, and they've limited the number of classes that we have available, so it's taking everybody longer to graduate, longer to transfer into the universities and CSUs. I hope all of you now know about how these budget cuts are affecting each of you individually. And if you remember one thing from my speech, I'd like you to remember this quote. It's from another member of the Students for Justice Club here at De Anza. The importance of community colleges is providing an accessible, diverse education through the programs and classes offered, benefiting all ages, ethnic backgrounds, and disabilities. Unfortunately, the present budget cuts will affect the very people that community colleges were set up to